What's up everyone, it's Nick again, back with another video, and yesterday I made a very depressing video. Well, 85% depressing to say the least, but today I'm in a very good mood. My Lakers are up 2-1, and LeBron has now taken the #1 spot for all-time playoff wins. Anthony Davis played really well, and playoff Rondo still very much exists. That's right. That was a really good game, First three quarters, a lot of back and forth, but then the fourth quarter, the Lakers take over. That's right. Oh, and I also got to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks being eliminated in the second round by the 5th seeded Miami Heat. How many of you thought that was going to happen? In the words of Marvin Gaye, what's going on? Before we continue, I'll ask if you can please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. It only takes a couple seconds and it makes a huge difference. I really appreciate it if you can please do that for me. Now let's cue the intro. First, I'd like to talk about my team, the LA Lakers, and their series against the Houston Rockets. As we know, they lost the first game, but they won these last two. And in Game 3, it was a lot of back and forth for the first three quarters. And I gotta say, for how much taller Anthony Davis is than PJ Tucker, PJ Tucker has done a pretty damn good job while guarding Anthony Davis. Now, while yes, Anthony Davis is scoring quite a bit, the fact that Anthony Davis isn't dropping 40 a game when Anthony Davis has like 5 inches on PJ Tucker, I think that's very impressive. And, the first two games, Anthony Davis took a lot of mid-range shots, and he was making them, but I think you'd rather be beat on those mid-range shots than him just constantly getting to the basket. In Game 3, I looked at the shot chart again just to make sure, and he got more of his buckets closer to the basket, and he got to the foul line quite a lot. 7 of his shots were mid-range shots, the other 6 were closer to the basket. He made all his shots closer to the basket. Those mid-range shots, he was 3 for 7, which is fine, and I think at the end of the day, when you're forcing him to take those mid-range shots, while he is an excellent mid-range shooter, still, I think that you'd rather live with that than have him just dominate the paint all day. The fact that he's not getting 30 to 40 per game dropped on him, to me that's a W for him, because you're not going to stop a star player like Anthony Davis, but if you just make him work, then you did your job. And there's also been playoff LeBron. Regular season LeBron's always been a beast too, but playoff LeBron, yeah, he's here and he's killing it right now. Honestly, at a certain point during the game, I thought he was going to get 40. Early on, I thought that the other guys need to get going. In the fourth quarter, Rajon Rondo did. I started thinking to myself when Rondo was going off in the fourth quarter, imagine if I told my high school self, back when the Lakers-Celtics rivalry was alive again and Rondo was becoming a star for the Celtics, I started thinking, imagine telling myself from back then that I would actually love Rondo 10 years later. Crazy thought, isn't it? And since it's been quite a long time since the Lakers have been to the playoffs, here's a fun fact, and if I were to post a trivia question about this, I think that most people would get this right. Rajon Rondo scored 20 points off the bench for the Lakers, and the last Laker to do that is Lamar Odom. And now, while Anthony Davis did actually have a pretty good statistical first half, I felt like early on in the game that he's got to step it up a little more, do a little more. But at the end of the day, he had a very good game, scoring 28 points, 15 rebounds. His 28 points were on very high efficiency. And I'll also talk about Kyle Kuzma, who I still don't really consider a third option, but honestly, what I think gets overlooked is the fact that he's become a pretty good cutter. I still think he's more of a bench scorer than anything, but he is a pretty good cutter, and at least he's still getting his buckets by cutting to the basket. Now, Markieff Morris had a really good game too, but he had a very quiet Game 3, and Danny Green and KCP, they really struggled shooting the ball, and this is something about Danny Green that I've been saying for a long time. Did adding him to this year's roster make them better than last year? Yes. Did they overpay him though? Also yes. For a guy who can't even give you 10 points per game, yeah, he definitely got overpaid. However, during the regular season, yeah, he shoots the 3 really well. He's a very good catch and shooter, and He does play defense. However, in the playoffs, honestly, his 2 rings make him seem like a better playoff performer than he actually is. He's actually very streaky. He did have a really good game 4 against Portland. Game 3 and 4, game 3 he shot 3 for 8 from the field, but also 2 for 4 from 3. So, okay, I'll take that considering that half the shots he took were threes. And game 4 against Portland, yeah, 75% from 3, 5 of 8 from the field. This series though, games 1 and 3, he has not been good. Game 2 though, he played really well. I just like if Danny Green could be a little more consistent. Because when he's good, he can really help this team. If he can really be that consistent 3-and-D guy, let's go. Oh, and also, aside from LeBron's 36 points on 57% shooting from the field, he was killing it from 3, knocking down 4 out of 9 threes. That's 44%. I loved seeing that too. And he had some pretty tough fadeaways too. And oh yeah, let's not forget about that block party he was having in the 3rd quarter. Now, like I said in my previous video, I'm not B-ball breakdown. I'm not heat check either, so I'm not gonna break down footage like that. But I'll just tell you what I observed, and I was very thrilled to see what I saw, especially in the 4th quarter, 3rd quarter as well. But 4th quarter when the Lakers really started to take over. As for the Rockets, James Harden and Russell Westbrook, they came to play, scoring 33 points and 30 points respectively. And they got some pretty good production out of Eric Gordon and Robert Covington, and also Jeff Green for the first 3 quarters. But then the 4th quarter, Russell Westbrook was pretty much carrying them. Harden and Jeff Green were the only 2 other guys in that 4th quarter to score. Harden just 5 points and Jeff Green 4 points, while Russell Westbrook gave them 11. And while Russell Westbrook was abysmal in game 2, he had a nice bounce back game this time, and last game he took way more threes than he should have been for a guy that's known to not be a good 3-point shooter. He shouldn't ever be taking 7 threes in a game. This time he took 4, made 2. Fair enough. I predicted before the series that the Lakers would win in 6, and so far I think I'm going to stick with that. I mean, 5 would be nice, but I'll say 6. Now let's talk about the Milwaukee Bucks getting knocked out of the 2nd round. Now this series made Giannis have the worst playoff series out of the 3 guys to win MVP and Defensive Player of the Year in NBA history. Now while he's not officially MVP yet, he most likely will win the award, and stop saying that he shouldn't win the award now because of his playoff failures. It's a regular season award, not a playoff award, and if we're going to take into account what happened in the playoffs, then we should take away Dirk Nowitzki's MVP award from 2007. That was the year that the Mavericks got bounced by the 8th-seeded Warriors, the We Believe Warriors. And Dirk had a horrible playoff series then. So please, let's keep in mind that this is a regular season award. So no, Giannis is still going to win the award regardless of what happened in this series. Also, while Giannis did have his struggles, to me, I think that Mike Budenholzer is really the scapegoat here for his inability to adjust. This happened against Toronto last year and again against Miami. Both times he got severely outcoached. On the other hand, though, I think that Erik Spoelstra hasn't gotten nearly as much credit as he should. Or actually, you know what? I think people are starting to realize it more now that Erik Spoelstra is among the best in the business. During the Big 3 Heat era, I think he just got overshadowed by the star power that he had. Now I think that people are really starting to see that he is a damn good coach. And unlike Mike Budenholzer, he can make adjustments on the fly. Mike Budenholzer, while yes, he's a great regular season coach, he won 60 games with a Hawks team that didn't have a legitimate superstar. Yeah, they had 4 All-Stars. Kyle Korver shouldn't count. They didn't have a legit superstar. And in Milwaukee, he took over a team that was a low-seeded playoff team and made them into a top-seeded playoff team. However, the playoffs have been his demise, and his inability to make adjustments, the responsibility really should fall on him more than anything. And also, his rotations in Game 1. Pat Connaughton should not be playing 26 minutes in a playoff game. Absolutely not. Game 3, Brook Lopez played 38 minutes, Giannis played 35, Middleton played 36, Brook Lopez should not be getting more minutes than Giannis or Middleton. Like, what kind of coach in their right mind would actually do that? And don't give me the plus-minus argument, even though all three were minuses. Brook Lopez was minus 23, and you know that plus-minus can be flawed sometimes. I don't think it's really that reliable of a stat. We all know Giannis is their best player, and he should be on the floor more than anyone, and Middleton should be one on the floor the next most. Brook Lopez, now while yes, he may be a good player, no, he should not be getting more minutes than those guys. The other thing, while the Heat are creating a wall to stop Giannis from getting the basket, yeah, I know Donald Trump sure loves that, doesn't he? And it's a strategy that's commonly used now. And yes, I get that Giannis' skill set is pretty limited. He's a good playmaker, not a great playmaker. He's a terrible outside shooter and mid-range shooter. We get that. However, you gotta find ways to adjust when you're a coach. This is basic coaching fundamentals. You have to be able to adjust. You have to be able to adjust on the fly, and you have to constantly be able to adjust. Mike Budenholzer has done a piss poor job at that, and he has to be held accountable more than everyone else. Another thing about the adjustments. All season, the Bucks have been giving up more threes than any other team in the league. That's been their game plan all season long. But guess what? It doesn't work against a sharp shooting team like the Heat. You have to adjust. And another thing, we all know Eric Bledsoe is a big time playoff choker. He did it again in this series. He didn't play game 1, but game 2, he did okay. Game 3, terrible. Game 4, the one game the Bucks won, he actually did pretty well. But game 5, the game they lost, yeah, absolutely terrible. Just 2 for 12 from the field. As their third guy, he should be held to a much higher standard, but he just continues to fall short time and time again in the playoffs. Oh, and I also want to talk about Jimmy Butler now. Going into the playoffs, or even going into the season, most of us, I know I didn't, if we had to name our top 10 players right now, we didn't have Jimmy Butler in there, right? And he's proven us wrong. He's definitely a top 10 player in the league right now. And last year in Philadelphia, it wasn't really the best fit because he had a point guard that can't shoot in Ben Simmons. And in the playoffs, Simmons and Embiid just had to stand around and watch him a lot of the time. And that's just not good basketball. This time around, he has a bunch of shooters around him. Well, other than Bam Adebayo. And also the fact that he has this reputation for being tough on his teammates, but in Miami, they've embraced this culture where you can yell at each other and no feelings are hurt, and it's been great for Miami, a big part of their success this year, which not many people, myself included, anticipated this year. Unlike in Philly last year, with those shooters around Jimmy Butler, and while Jimmy Butler, yes, he's their best scorer, but we know he's not a good three-point shooter. Having those shooters around him has really made things work really well in Miami this year, along with their mentality of you can yell at each other and not hurt anyone's feelings. On to the Clippers and Nuggets series. Game 1 was an absolute blowout by the Clippers. Game 2, the Nuggets evened it up and Jamal Murray had himself a game, but games 1 and 3, he has been back down to earth. In fact, even game 2 compared to what he did against Utah, yeah, it's not anything like what he did in the first round. First round, Jamal Murray was playing like a superstar, but in reality, he's just a very good player, but not actually a superstar. Kawhi Leonard proved to be the best player in the world in game 1. Game 2, not so much. Game 3, other than from 3, he played pretty well for the most part, and Paul George, although he had those really bad games against Dallas, these last 2 games, he's played very well. Well, game 2, he wasn't amazing, but he wasn't the problem. And game 3, he played really well, shooting 12 for 18 with 32 points. I'll take that any day. And I think that this series could go the full 7, but at the end of the day, I'm going with the Clippers because they just have more star power. Now, on to the Celtics and Raptors. This is a series that I think many of us expected to go the full 7, and so far that might be the case, or maybe the Celtics will close it out in Game 6. But I think one thing that needs to be addressed, I think that Pascal Siakam has become exposed. Now, I do think that he's going to make some All-Star games in the future. I don't think that this is exactly his peak. I mean, maybe he won't get much better from here, but I don't see him getting worse after this season. Just this notion that he carried the Raptors this year, let's please get that out of our heads, because no, that's not true. First of all, Nick Nurse is one of the best coaches in the business. The fact that he's been able to have the success that he's had this year, even after Kawhi's departure, that's why he won Coach of the Year this year. And while Pascal Siakam is now their go-to guy, because Kawhi's gone, they've had a very well-balanced attack. Now, the Raptors' offensive rating this year was around the league average, but it's their defense that really stood out. And also, it's not like they have some legit star power, and I don't consider Pascal Siakam a superstar by any means. A star, yes, but not a superstar. Let's keep in mind there's a difference. And right now, the Celtics are exposing him as a guy that, yes, he's good, but he's not a go-to guy on a championship team. And during the regular season, his three-point percentage is better than the shooter that he actually is. And for the Celtics, Jason Tatum is playing really, really well. And I also think that, considering that he didn't even make an all-defensive team this year, he is a very underrated defender. Considering that, I'm actually not really sure right now off the top of my head who he should have made it over instead, but just for the fact that he didn't make an all-defensive team this year, yeah, he's an underrated defender. Kemba Walker is now finally in the right situation, and he's thriving right now. In Charlotte, great talent, but never had a good enough team around him. Now he has a great team around him, and he's absolutely thriving. And Jaylen Brown is looking really, really good in this series as well. And Marcus Smart is shooting 40% from 3 in this series. Whoa. I mean, he shot 35% from 3, which is kind of meh during the season. But in this series, he's shooting 40%. And something I found out pretty recently is that he actually shot 40% off the dribble from 3 during the regular season. That's Steph Curry-like. I mean, how are we even putting Steph Curry and Marcus Smart in the same conversation, right? I mean, yeah, Marcus Smart is way better defensively. That doesn't mean he's actually a better player. Of course, Steph Curry's the better player. We all know that. But yeah, Marcus Smart has actually even been really impressive in this series. But back to the Raptors, yeah, the fact that Pascal is only averaging 15 points per game in this series, and yes, while Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet have been a big part of the Raptors' success, like I said, no, Pascal Siakam did not carry the Raptors. That's not true at all. You'd expect Pascal to be the lead man, right? Just like he's been all season, but no, he hasn't been. He's been doing terrible in this series, but you know what though? Gotta give some credit to the Celtics defense. I have a feeling that the Celtics will close this out in Game 6 now. I originally picked Celtics in 7, but now, I feel like the Celtics got this in Game 6. We'll see though. Now that's the end of this video. If you made it to the end, I really appreciate you. And if you haven't yet, like I said at the very beginning, if you can please like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate that. And I will come with more videos in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.